Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the end of day 2 of the Tring Book Festival. Can I welcome to the stage the wonderful Arthur Smith?
Microphone on? No, oh, no, it's fallen off. That's a good start. Anyway, I'm Arthur Smith. You might know me from the recent TV series The Crown, where I played Princess Margaret. Some of you may know me perhaps from Radio 4. May I say to those who do not listen to Radio 4, in the end, you will. And some of you might know me from a show I was on a couple of years ago on telly called Celebrity Dogging. I don't know if you saw it. It was me, Stan Collymore, some bloke from EastEnders, hanging around in a car park on the outskirts of Wolverhampton, and every now and again one of us would get in the back of a car and have sex with a woman with a bag over her head who turned out to be Anne Widdecombe. It's the sort of crap they want on TV. Anyway, I'm now going to introduce a sort of main guest of the evening. It's lovely to see you all here. Are you cold in here? Is it a bit nippy? Well, we'll do some exercise classes shortly. But now, what can I say about Alexei Sayle that's never been said before? Well, he's a short, thin Tory who has never done anything funny in his life. And he's here tonight to talk about his book. He's the second of his autobiographies called Thatcher Stole My Trousers, which is a very funny title. And the first one was called, anyone know? Stalin Ate My Homework, correct. And anyway, we're going to talk about that a bit. And later, towards the end of the evening, in 45 minutes or so, I'll be inviting you to ask any questions if you've got any, and apparently we're live streaming, so we might have some questions from people in Venezuela too. So will you please, without further ado, welcome to the stage, Alexei Sayle.
To the other seat.
All right, we've got to swap rounds.
There's a bit of the camera.
All right, there's a better camera on you, Lexi. Lexi, so how is it?
How is it?
Yeah.
It's all right. I was. You mentioned the titles to. There's a kind of theme, you know, Stalin Ate My Homework, and I was trying to do the third volume, and I was going to call it Blair's a Cunt. but I thought we might have a bit of trouble with W.H. Smith, so.
Have you started writing the third one then?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Yes.
Because this one was from 5 years ago, I think.
No, it ends in 2016,
Yeah.
but it ends at the miners' strike in '84.
That's right.
But yeah, it's much more. I mean, I think that the third one's more difficult, really, because I mean, the interesting thing I think is the struggle, really, to become famous. Once you become famous, it's just So I, went to a restaurant in Ladbroke Grove with Alan Yentop, and he said, "We'd love you to come," and it's just you have to find a way to. And I'm still struggling to find a way to have a kind of ironic view of that, really.
Well, maybe you should have some terrible disaster that befalls you. That's useful in an autobiography.
Well, I think doing the film Carry On Columbus, I think probably. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking when I thought I was getting ahead of the game. I was being ironic. Well, I know they held a gigantic check over me eyes when I signed the contract, but yeah.
Who was in it? Carry On Columbus. That was like the last one they ever did, wasn't it?
Oh, quite rightly, yeah. The only remainer from the original kind of crew was Jim Dale.
Oh yeah.
I think all the others refused to be in it. Really,
Wasn't Julian Clary in it?
Oh, Julian Clary was in it, yeah. You know, there was a load of people who sullied their reputations by being in it.
I don't think anyone saw it, so I wouldn't worry.
No.
I once spent 3 hours on a train with Kenneth Williams.
Right.
And it was quite interesting because it was funny because he was a really gifted performer and whatnot, but he was quite depressed and he didn't care about that. What he really wanted to be was some sort of Shakespearean actor or a playwright or something. And he told me as well, of course, because it was difficult, you know, being gay when he was, he told me the only time he'd ever felt sexually happy was during the Blitz. And I think it was pretty. What was it like for you during the Blitz, Alexei?
I'm not quite that old, so.
So how's the pandemic been for you?
It's been okay. Well, you know, during the you remember how beautiful the weather was, you know, in those first few months, you know, and it was.
And then you could see the sky.
You could see the
cars,
sky, and you know there was bears and wolves in Muswell Hill, you know, and it was just. It was idyllic, really. So we got like a patio which can only be seen from the kitchen of our upstairs neighbours, and so I started going out there in less and less clothes because it felt very little until finally I was going out there naked without just sitting on the patio and working naked because the upstairs neighbours had gone to Scotland, so you know I wouldn't know. And then one day I was out there completely naked, and suddenly from the upstairs window I heard this. Woo! And I didn't really think anything about it, but a little bit later on, she's a retired barrister, and I think they had some kind of refugee staying with them. And I heard that I was sitting under the window, so she couldn't hear me, but she was talking to the refugee, and she said, "Oh yes, that's our neighbour's patio." She said, "It's kind of large pink man." She said, "Not very pleasant." So that was the early months of lockdown, was exposing my this woman.
But you actually had COVID, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I'm a COVID survivor hero.
You were on tour.
I was on tour. I'd just done 5 nights in Liverpool, and it was well. And I think that was I was talking to a professor afterwards, and she said it was a super spreader event, that the entire left of Liverpool had been decimated, really.
At your show?
But I had like cold symptoms for a few days, and then suddenly, my sense of taste and smell just went off like a switch had been flicked, and then I got very, very exhausted for a couple of weeks, really couldn't, and then it was fine after that.
Well, Linda, your wife, was telling me that she wanted to call an ambulance or something, and you refused.
Yeah. Well, my temperature suddenly spiked one night, and I think that was because they were. I think because they didn't know what they were doing in the early days, they were taking people into hospital and then intubating them.
Yeah.
I was killing them. This is not very light.
No, all right, let's move on.
There's the dads. The dads were literally in the hospital. You didn't say it. The bodies. It was like the Crimean War.
All right, then tell me how much you love Rees-Mogg.
Rees-Mogg. Well, that's the reason I mentioned Rees-Mogg is I have actually dandled him on my knee. I have dandled William Rees-Mogg on my knee because one of my lecturers when I was at Chelsea Art School was his auntie, Anne Rees-Mogg, and she was, she was obsessed about her nephews, really, and so she used to bring them all into the studio and stuff. So she'd give me this kid, in a pinstripe suit with glasses.
Bow tie.
Yeah, bow tie. Yeah, I kind of dandled, but it's that question, if you've been in Munich in 1933, should I have kind of picked him up by one leg? What's he been doing the world a favour?
Yeah, mind you, told him Hitler, as you sort of are. And I always think it was the fault, if only Vienna Art School.
Let him in.
Who knows what he might, and then he might have just been a shit artist that no one had heard of. But you went to you've had a lot of different jobs, including dinner lady.
I was a dinner lady, yeah. Well, I went to, I went to, I went to Chelsea Art School when I was 19. And that was, as I say in the book, that was a tremendous shock for me, really. It just, for the first time coming up against posh people, because there weren't any in Liverpool. If they were, they kind of disguised themselves, even if you were like Lord Sefton or something, and then we'd go, fucking hell, I'm fucking Lord Sefton. I fucking own all this fucking shit, you know what I mean? But I'm crazy. You couldn't act posh in Liverpool, you know what I mean? You had to tone yourself down, really. And the first week I was in an art history lecture. And the lecturer put up a slide of a Van Gogh painting, and the girl in my class said, oh yes, I know that. It's the originals in the hall of our flat in Rome. I thought, fucking hell, it's not even in the living room.
Yeah, I'd never met any posh people till I went to university, and that was amazing. A couple of them actually owned a car, and then one of them I was in Norwich, had got a taxi from London to Norwich. And I thought, how could anyone ever do that?
It's incomprehensible, isn't it, at first, when because you've just never encountered them. I remember I've been at a Vietnam demonstration with some posh kids, and there was all the steel workers or something. I said, "Was your dad in steel?" And he said, "Well, he owns it. He owns a steel mill." Yeah,
you went on a few demos.
Oh yeah. Well, as I say, because both my parents are in the Communist Party, and we used to go. The only time we came down to London First was demos. So the only way I could find my way around London First was to start at Speaker's Corner. And then kind of walk down the street shouting, like St. Paul's or the American Embassy or something. It was,
Well, talking of Speaker's Corner, perhaps that's a good chance to bring up Tony Allen.
Yeah.
Who I'm going to move into now to Alexei starting off in comedy. In fact, I'm just going to, before we talk about Tony Allen, I'm just going to read a bit from a book by someone else. Within 30 seconds of seeing Alexei Sayle on the stage at the comic strip at the Raymond Review Bar, Soho in 1981, I finally knew I wanted to try stand-up comedy. What ferocious attack he had. And there's a joke here of yours that you might remember. I don't just do this, I'm also the editor of a newspaper called What's On in Stoke Newington. I don't know if you know it, it's a big sheet of paper with fuck all written on it. He swore masterfully through tirades about social workers, muesli, Marxists, Mrs. Thatcher and real ale, polemics which frequently spun out into demented whimsy. The antithesis of the sparkly stand-up guy, Alexei was also scornful of the privileged Oxford types who dominated TV. He was angry. Fuck you. That was evidently comedy's version of punk.
Yeah.
So that was actually me writing that in my... Because you were tell us how it all came about.
Yeah, well, it's hard to do. Well, most of you, I think, probably. But if you're talking to young people, it's a bit like describing like comedy before alternative comedy, British comedy before the Comedy Store. It's a bit like describing the Paleolithic age, isn't it? These giant lumbering creatures,
with sparkly jackets.
Yeah, called Bernard Manninger or I don't know. And so but those the stand-up land, because Britain had never had a kind of a tradition of that kind of smart Jewish kind of political comedian, really. It's in a suit standing at a mic. We'd never had that, really. So all that you'd had was these terrible racists, like these awful kind of working men's club comedians. You'd have the odd folk singer like Billy Connolly or Mike Hardin or Jasper Carrott, who would, did anecdotal stuff, but they weren't political, they weren't about lifestyle. And then that was it, really, kind of, Oxbridge Reviews and stuff like that. So there was that tradition of and I just had this idea that there must be a market out there for somebody in a suit, standing at a microphone doing stuff about politics and drugs And you know, and so I just slowly, with another guy, I just slowly started to put an act together. And then
you were doing Brecht as well.
We had
you?
the Brecht cabaret group, yeah, and that kind of, yeah, and then, well, that broke up, and then it was me and this other guy, and I wrote some, and then we used to just tour, you know, just, we didn't know anybody, you know, I mean, that's also the thing about, that it, you know, I think from outside, before you crack, I mean, the entertainment business seemed like a citadel, really, and I couldn't see the door, you know, I couldn't see how you could get into the business, really, you know, and so we would talk. I would say, like, there was two gigs that we did that ended in full-scale riots. I mean, like, really violent,
really?
You know, yeah, just because it was unsettling, what you know, particularly what I was doing, that kind of aggression, you know, in terms of stand-up and stuff. And so it was, and then, so I had this act, and it was kind of going nowhere. But then Peter Rosengard and Don Ward opened the Comedy Store, and I knew right away that was it, really. So I auditioned there, and they offered me the job of MC, and then so I used to do the running order and stuff like that. And through that, I started to meet other comics, really. So it started to become a movement. Tony Allen, I think, was the first one that came down.
Tony Allen, who used to speak at Hyde Park Corner.
Yeah.
And he was the one, in a way, who first suggested, well, look, you know, don't do that sort of homophobic, sexist, racist stuff.
Yeah.
And that was one of the key elements of it.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that gave stand-up comedy in Britain, I mean, that kind of anecdotal stand-up would have happened anyway, you know, because I guess it's happened in all countries, really. But what gave it a unique flavour, I think, in Britain is the people, like Tony, it very much came out of the left, really, the political left.
Yeah.
Tony was an anarchist and a squatter. I'd been a Maoist. I've been involved in you know, my parents have been in the Communist Party, and so, and you know, the fringe, the others who came from fringe theatre and stuff was also very left wing. So it had a very specific character, and I was astonished when I went to the original Comedy Store in Los Angeles about 1990. I thought you had all these guys who were in the suit, but I mean, I was astonished at how racist and misogynistic. Really? Oh, it was awful. The material.
But it was, in a way, it was the Americans who were a bit of an inspiration. I mean, that's why they
stylistically, yeah, no,
and
definitely.
Also there were people like obviously Lenny Bruce and George Carlin and
yeah. So that, yeah. Although I just had a vague idea in my mind of who they were, really. I didn't. I hadn't really studied them, but I just knew that. But I think it did have it had a particular flavour, the alternative comedy movement in Britain, and all to the good. I think right from the start, it was anti-racist, anti-sexist, and stuff like that. And that was very specific kind of character, and I did. You know.
Yeah, and when you changed from your sort of leather jacket into the suit, somehow that was like a big moment. Somehow,
yeah, well, I think things, you know, kind of.
And the suit didn't really fit you.
It was my best suit at first. It was like,
oh, sorry.
But it was one of them things that is like fortuitous. You know, stuff comes together. Look, you know, you kind of so. Yeah, the first few gigs I did in a kind of leather jacket and stuff, and that didn't feel quite right. And then I bought this suit for I think £8 or £10. It was an American mohair and silk suit that I bought in an Oxfam shop in Putney. I tried to bargain them down. And they're like,
it's a £7.
Yeah, do you want to rob the starving children of £1? I'm like, yeah. So I bought this suit, and at first it was sort of my best suit, and then one night I think I wore it on stage, and it just, and because I was starting to go bald and I shaved my head and stuff, the look just, suddenly I thought, yeah, this really works. And it was also because the suit was like mohair is quite a fragile material, very quickly this area here wore out. I'd rather just kind of rather than like go to a tailor's and get it fixed, I tried to fix it myself with gaffer tape. And so it was when I was performing, there'd be like this tape hanging down from me, and people would be like, expecting a kind of a stunt or something, you know, fireworks to erupt from my groin or something, because it was just all this tape. Anyway, so then So then I had another suit made, and I just went to a really bad tailor, and because it didn't fit, you know, it was that thing. And then finally, by the time I was doing when we were doing stuff, we used to go to the show business tailors called Mr. Eddie's in Berwick Street and so on. I was in Mr. Eddie's one day getting for a fitting, and there was all these little suits hanging on the rack in the dressing room. I said, "Who are those suits for?" And he said, "Those are for the PG Tips chimps." He's just been in for a fitting, you know. All right pack of bastards they are, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the PG Tips.
But that's also, I thought, that's kind of like, that's, you know, me with me Marxism and me Brecht references. A load of chimps in a tea advert. It's the same shit, really. You know? I mean, it's just the business.
Well, one of the things I noticed, like I said in that, was that you had a kind of anger about you.
Yeah.
And you meant what you were angry about.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes you see now, you'll see comedians and pretending to be angry, and I was thinking, you're not really fucking angry. You're just doing the lines that someone's written for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in a way, I don't know where that came from. But I mean, because I was trying to provide a kind of antidote. I was trying to be anti-hypocrisy and stuff. I was trying to be. I hated all that smarm of the convention, you know, the conventional showbiz comics, and so I just wanted to partly say to the audience, you know. I mean, you know, I hate you, which was a novel approach. Nobody's ever tried that before, to genuinely... Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine, he's dead now, an old comedy writer, he said, I've never seen a comedian before who doesn't want the audience to like him.
Yeah. Oh, you said it was Les Dennis in your book.
It's a guy called Dennis Burson, actually.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But he said, because most comedians... I mean, I wanted people to laugh, but I wanted them in a way to dislike me. I wanted it to be so kind of, you know, because that was... It cut through all the you know, the kind of schmaltz, you know.
Yeah, all that kind of, hello, what's your name? What do you do?
Where are you from? Are you going out together?
Yeah.
Where did you
Yeah, that was one of the things. They do that. They do that again now these days.
Oh,
comedians.
yeah.
I know. Because I always remember Tony Allen had a story about he went to see some American comedian in Edinburgh who was doing that. What's your name? What do you do? And the bloke did it to Tony. He said, I'm Tony Allen. I'm a comedian. What do you do?
I hate all that bullshit. Yeah, it's but it was a unique proposition. I mean, it's like, that's kind of naive in a way that I wanted to be a huge entertainer. I didn't want to mess about with I wanted to be as big as I could be while hating the audience, you know, and being rude to the audience. I want to be on primetime telly doing that. You kind of find there's a kind of level which you can't really get.
Well, you did, you know, the young ones, obviously, in a sense, you were doing that in that.
Yeah. I mean, that was that was. I mean,
and you became a big star as a result of that.
Yeah. So I did. Yeah, in the end, I found a format where I fitted into that, where I could do that. Yeah, exactly.
So what do you make of comedians now? And tell me, how much do you love Michael McIntyre?
A friend of mine says it's the most poisonous, it's the most horrible thing, because it is cruel, really. I used to do, when I was doing stand-up, I'd do this impression of Michael McIntyre, which goes, banal observation. But then the horrible thing I would do was I'd say, desperate need to be loved. I'd say, look, your father's never coming back now, fuck off. Which is horrible, really horrible. I mean, he's never done nothing. He's never been nothing but nice to me.
I know, but yeah, I know you mean. I find it all a bit ingratiated, and like the observations don't seem that interesting to me. But then,
no, I mean, it's
maybe we're just jealous of the money he makes.
Well, certainly, it's weird. It's a kind of weird thing, isn't it? I sort of watched in a kind of anthropological. I watched a whole episode of Live from the Apollo a while ago. And I just thought, in this whole show, nobody has said anything funny. Nobody has said anything interesting. Nobody has said anything relevant. And yet the audience is sitting there going, fucking, I mean, it's a bizarre kind of.
Well, maybe it's just you and me
ritual.
getting old, Lexi. You know,
Well,
there
I
must-
think funny is always funny, Arthur. I don't know. It's a weird kind of. I mean, they do. I mean, all them life in the apartment. It's just kind of like just banal, isn't it? You know, just fucking,
tell me about your. Tell me about.
Well, you know, Michael McIntyre's playing stadiums, and I'm in a hall in Tring.
Yeah,
So
but,
we think, you know,
yeah, but you've got your integrity. Tell me about your love of Ben Elton.
well, again, it's just me being. I mean, it's just me being horrible, really. I mean, I made him cry twice, I think, which I'm not.
Oh, did
I'm
you?
not proud of that, really.
How did you make him cry?
Just by being horrible to him. He came up to me once. He said, this did because I thought Ben was not sincere, really, and so I'd say.
I mean, you essentially
shitty
thought in a
things.
way Ben was sort of stealing your persona.
Yeah, and I just to say things about him in interviews, and that just made me look pathetic, really. I think it just made me, you can't. I mean, I did do it, but it ultimately it just it was wrong on me. But he came to me and said like, what was he said? You've been nasty about me. I could take it if you. If you take it, he said, if you didn't like my material, that's fine, but it would tear me apart if you didn't like me. I said, I don't like you or your fucking material. And I did. So I actually did formally apologize. I've done a bit. I did formally apologize to him because I genuinely think it was bad karma and it was wrong. Really, I'm not in charge of him. What he did was.
Yeah.
And I did genuinely. I said to him, I was really genuinely sorry, and he was very touched. And as a kind of quid pro quo, he invited me to the opening night of his Rod Stewart musical.
Oh yeah, what was that called?
Tonight's the Night.
Yeah.
And in those 3 hours, I paid for every shitty.
So you stayed on after the interval, though?
No, I couldn't leave really because he would have got, I would say, I've got a whole, and then but he fucked me in the end because there was like wristbands for like the backstage, and I thought black wristband, and I was shown into a cupboard, and I remember there was me, the saxophone player out of Madness.
Oh yeah.
And Sven-Göran Eriksson. In his cupboard, like tiny little room drinking warm lager, and then we saw all his real friends with the gold wristbands. Richard Curtis, they were being shown into this kind of Greek temple. It's being good, fucking Sven-Göran Eriksson. And then
Tell me about Robin Williams.
Robin. Yeah, well, that was. It was a very magical time that first year at the Comedy Store. So one night, I used to stand at the bottom of the stairs when comedians came in and do the running order, and this guy came up to me, little guy, dyed blonde hair, and he said, "Sure, can I go on?" I said, "Yeah, sure. What's your name?" And he said, "Robin Williams." I was like, "Robin Williams?" And actually, he wasn't really known.
No, it's Mork and Mindy.
Mork and Mindy, which was kind of a kids show. And they used to put it out, I think, at 10:30 on a Saturday morning. So people didn't really know him, but he'd been in Malta for 6 months filming Popeye with Robert Altman, which was a weird kind of didn't really work. So I was thinking he'd gone in a cab and said to the cab, Heathrow, take me to a comedy club, and he must have got like a hip. Because the Comedy Store was the only comedy club in Britain then where he could. That it's surprised, given his cabinet, he didn't take him to the kind of Circus Tavern Purfleet. He'd be on there with like Jim Davis and go, Chunky White, there you go. If Robin had gone on there, he would have died. But yeah, he turned up and he did like an hour.
Yeah, because he did it because I think it was quite a common thing wherever he went, Robin Williams. wherever he went in the world, he'd always just go to the nearest comedy club. Because a few years after that, I was, I can't remember, anyway, I was on at the Comedy Store and he turned up and said, can I, but he was famous by then. I went, whoa, fucking hell, Robbie Williams. And, on he went and he ended up doing 45 minutes.
Yeah,
and, although oddly, he didn't really use the microphone, which didn't help.
Really?
No, and I always remember he did one routine about, well, you find that if Americans come, it's like if you're British and you go and do a gig abroad, there's certain words or things you don't really. I always remember there was one American comedian who he had a joke. He said, well, what is a sausage roll? Is that a croissant with a hard on? Some of these observations. You played Australia and you've been around the world a bit, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been around the world. I can't find my baby, which was really a matter for social services. But where the fuck that came from? Yeah.
How did you find playing Australia?
Fine. I mean, the thing about Australia is that I think in comedic terms, it's very, it was and still is, I think, very much linked to Britain, really. So no, it's always been fine, really. I've had a lot of. Although I did towards the end. I mean, towards the sort of 90s, I started to fall out of love with stand-up comedy, really.
Yeah,
and
you stopped doing it.
I came to an end in Perth, in Western Australia, in 1996.
Why was that?
But because I kind of, I think partly because the guy in the tight suit, I didn't realize it, but the guy in the tight suit was a kind of persona. Yeah. He wasn't me, really. And so there was a limit to what he could do. And I was just I couldn't expand the material, really. By then it was that kind of, that attack was starting to frustrate me, I think, but I didn't really know a way to step aside from it, really. And it was I just thought in the end, it wasn't even a decision. I just kind of dribbled to a stop.
Yeah, really. And then you became a ballet dancer.
I did, yeah. Well, I think of those as the wilderness years, really. But I did present several dance specials for BBC Two. It's that thing where, you didn't know that. You just
no, I didn't.
I did. Yeah, me and Deborah Bull, the prima ballerina, at the we presented dance night on BBC Two. She's not a very good dancer. and because I like, it's that thing where when you kind of thrash it. I think I had several years when I was really, it's like from when I stopped doing stand-up to kind of when I started writing, in a way where I was trying to find a new role for myself. And also so I was thrashing about doing different kind of crap. And also I think the times had changed, the people had realized, because I'd come at it from that left-wing thing and with that aggression, but then people started to realize that they could go out and have a night out and see a comedian without being screamed at about what shitbags they were. They kind of suddenly thought, I don't have to put up with this. I can have an easier time, with my money, rather than this sweaty man yelling at me.
What's the most shit gig you ever did? Or how about the best or worst heckle?
Well, the best heckle was when I was doing Bristol Coast and Hall, and I was doing a joke, and a bloke in the audience shouted out. He said, "You said that the last time you were here." So I did one of me prepared put downs, which was, "Well, you're a daft twat to pay to hear it again, then, aren't you?" He said, "You said that last time as well." Okay, you win.
I remember I had a couple I remember early on I was doing a gig in Swansea and the woman said, "Why don't you go back to London and leave us all alone?" and then another one, this wasn't me, it was a guy who was on before me. He was even older than me and he was died on his arse. And suddenly a woman's voice rang out from the audience. "Excuse me, I think you really need to think about the way your life is going." You know, not just your act is shit, so is the whole point of your existence.
But I don't think you can, I mean, the bad gigs are where you learn, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, which is a kind of cliche, but it's true that you can't, the ones that go well are, they just go well. You don't learn that much. But it's really when in the early days, when shit goes horribly wrong, it's when you really have to think about what you're doing really and adapt, I think, So it's, I always, I mean, in a sense, I'm always grateful for the bad gigs, really.
Perhaps we'll see if there's any questions from the audience or from the people in Venezuela. Gentleman down the front here.
Viva Chavismo.
Can you just wait for microphone?
All right, we're waiting for the microphone. While you're waiting, perhaps you can do some juggling. All right, here comes the microphone. It's only, you'll get a cab here, it'll be quicker.
Hi, Alexei.
Hiya.
It's a confession more than a question.
No, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
So.
I actually paid to see Carry On Columbus.
Really?
Yeah, but it was only £1 in. Elephant and Castle on a Monday evening. We used to do it every Monday.
Yeah.
But the actual confession is I didn't realise you were in it. We must have left before you came on screen.
Yeah, well then maybe I wasn't in it.
I bet you made it, didn't you? I bet you were good.
Well, it's one of the things about that is I think one of the rules of movie making is if you're having a good time on a film set, it's probably going to be a really shit film. And we were having such a great time on that film. I think we were drunk a lot of the time. And I remember spending a load of time talking to Bernard Cribbins about rifles. and it was like a really happy experience. I was just, then if you're in, because the energy is just going into fucking about. It's not going into the movie, so that's it.
It's funny. I can't seem to remember there was a point at which I was going to be asked to come on as Sid James.
Oh right, yeah.
I am slowly, inexorably turning into Sid James. Yeah. Right, any more questions?
I've got a quick one online. Rebecca, will there be any more imaginary sandwich bar?
Yeah, probably. I think we've got 8 for being sort of end of next year. Yeah,
this is a radio show.
Yeah, and it's been, it's been a real renaissance for me in many ways. I think to kind of find that show on Radio 4, I think has been a real, coming together of kind of, I'm in the right place to do it. And it's a very, it's been a wonderful experience doing Sandwich Bar. And
any more questions? There's someone over there.
It's been a long time, Alexei, since I last saw you live, and it was indeed at Raymond's Review Bar. And you were brilliantly angry. It was amazingly funny. The best gag of the night was the gentrifiers moving into Stoke Newington with their strip pine handbags.
What was that?
It was about Habitat, wasn't it? About people strip pine. What was it?
Strip pine handbags was your punchline, which we all thought was brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
Time, yeah.
Are we all a bit too sensitive now to take that anger from our comedians?
Yeah, and this is where my career comes to an end. Yeah, we're definitely living in a more vengeful age, I think. There is, it's kind of, I've always scared, something like Sandwich, but the last, episode 1 of Series 3 of Sandwich Bar, which went out, was entirely pro-Corbyn episode, and it trended at #1 on Twitter all day, and I think it's probably one of the highest rated shows that Radio 4 has ever had. So, you can still do radical material, but it is, you have to. You definitely have to be more careful these days, I think, about what you say, I think. I mean, in some ways, I don't know whether that's a bad thing or not. What do you think, Arthur?
Well, I mean, yeah, it is some, there's, I mean, the whole like trans thing is, I mean, I don't really, I don't really understand it all, but people get so worked up. I mean, it's partly social media's just shouting at you all the time in a way that wasn't when we were starting out. Was
No.
it? I mean, you're not on Twitter or anything,
No,
are you?
I steer well clear of social media, I think, which is probably a good thing. And yeah, it's
because you got in trouble, didn't you, with when you were on Desert Island Discs? Or something?
Yes, a Conservative MP tried to say that I have my Desert Island Discs cancelled because I allowed anti-Semitism. This Christian fanatic was telling this Jew that he had to be cancelled.
Yeah.
Ironic. That's ironic. It did, and it, you know, in all fairness, it was fine. You know, I stand with Alexei Sayle was trending at #1 on Twitter all day, and he was shouted down even by, you know, even people who hate me and I hate back. We're all saying this is ludicrous. You know, this is you know, kind of ridiculous cancel culture. So I mean, it did in a sense prove that you know, that you can't, you know, that I at least seemed to be safe from, you know, he was roundly condemned for his censoriousness. Yeah, I mean, so maybe the system works.
I'm guessing you're not really a big fan of the current government. Jesus fucking Christ.
No, not really.
No, well, let's let this go. Right. Any further questions here?
There's one upstairs.
Oh, one upstairs. Good.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Who's your lady friend?
First of all, I'd like to commend you both on being inspired with your dress, looking very much like your book covers.
I'm worried I'm a little bit Michael Portillo with these trousers, which isn't a good look.
But I'd like to ask both of you, have either of you ever been invited to be on Who Do You Think You Are? And if you haven't, would you ever do it?
They asked me and I'd said yes, but then they didn't do it in the end. I think partly because they weren't going to introduce, you know, I wouldn't end up crying on screen because, you know, there was a few things I didn't know, but I kind of knew most of my. I think what they really want is someone make, you know, like some huge discovery. Like, who was it recently? It turned out it was related to Henry VIII or something.
Danny Dyer.
It was it?
Danny Dyer.
That's, yeah. But I don't think they found anything of that much interest, so I didn't get it done. Would you do it, Alexei?
Yeah, well, they invited. I think in the first series they asked me if I was interested, and I was then so full of arrogance that I went like, "No, fuck you." And then when I saw how popular it was, I went crawling to them on my bed. I said, "Oh, well, I wouldn't mind." They were like, "Yeah, no, fuck you." They were like, "Oh, I'll do it now." And they were like, "Nah, we don't fucking
Well, I think that is
anymore."
one thing, when you get a bit successful, there's a few years where if you're not careful, you can take yourself a bit too seriously.
Oh yeah, I definitely went through that phase, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think a friend of mine in the end took me aside and sort of said, "Stop it."
Yeah.
It's partly, I think, because you're trying to, I think when you're on the cusp of being a success, you think if you act like a success, if you act all arrogant, then you'll somehow magic it into existence.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, if you've got PR people trailing around saying how great you are, and you end up thinking, people asking you, everyone asking you to do stuff, when previous, you know, a few years earlier it was nothing, you start strutting around like a bit of a twat.
Yeah, I did that, yeah. I definitely been there, done that.
Any more questions? You got one over there, Ben?
Virtual crowd are quiet. Virtual crowd are quiet.
Well, I'll give you a question. What's the capital of Venezuela?
Caracas.
Bless you.
Viva Chavismo!
Oh yeah, I remember doing some. Tell me about you and Sting hanging out.
Well, I thought that's one of the things, isn't it? I mean, again, talking about fame and the early days of fame, one of the things that you do, I think, one of the things that you see, and you see your kind of cohort do it as well, is you see people. Take your medication.
That was me. Matron, I'm here.
But you sort of like, you see, people, if you want to be a really big star, then you have to only be friends with other big stars, I think. And you form this kind of galaxy of, and then you get rid of your lesser friends and stuff like that. And it's just a thing that happens. I saw a lot of people, that I knew do that. Really.
You worked with Sting at Amnesty.
Well, yeah. So I did the Amnesty thing with Sting, and he said to me, "You're really funny, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he just sort of, I thought, well, I'll give it a go. Sting wants to be me mate.
Yeah.
I'll give it a go. I'll see what it's like, to be mates with this kind of, and at the time he was massive. It didn't really work out. It was all right, really, but it was, I was ideally ill-suited to being mates with with a superstar, because one of the things that you can't mock them, for instance. It's like I said on the radio, and this was like years, obviously, before the internet. I remember doing late at night on Radio 2, and somebody asked me about Sting, and I said he's like a school teacher, which he was. And then about 10 minutes later, the phone went, and it was Sting going, "You said I was like a school teacher on the radio just now." And I said, "Well, you were." But the thing, he must have had like a bank of radios. He must have been monitoring, and you couldn't do it.
So whenever
he must have been listening like a kind of, and like televisions from all across the world monitoring and looking for somebody who was saying the word Sting, and there was no electronic way to do that at that point. He would have had to do it himself.
Tell me about when you went on holiday with Donald Trump.
I don't think that happened.
I did. Well, I once met Bill Clinton.
Right.
Because he was at the Hail My Literary Festival just after he'd been president, although they still call him president anyway. And he was giving a speech on conflict resolution, and he was in the same venue as me. I was doing this Leonard Cohen show I was doing, and so I wasn't allowed to do a sound check because they had all Secret Service people, and there was like snipers on the top of the primary school and whatnot. And which apparently some of the primary school teachers wanted to keep. But then I did my show after. Oh, that's right. I went to see his speech, and then I said, and at the end he started, because I had to go on after to do my show, and then he's doing proper sort of politicians shaking hands with everyone. And I said, "Look, hurry up, I've got to go on soon." And I subsequently met someone who said I was like moments away from being like bundled into the back of a car and sent to Guantanamo Bay. But then I did meet him after, right late on. There was some dude where you could pay 200 quid to kiss his ass. And he came along sort of shaking hands, and I was there. And I said, "Oh, I've got a bone to pick with you because I had to go on late because of you." He said, "Oh," and he'd seen the poster. I said, "You're Arthur Smith. Wow. You were doing Leonard Cohen." And then he said, "Suzanne Takes You Down." And I said, "Yeah, to her place near the river." And then we sang through Suzanne.
Then you had sex together.
Yeah. Right. I have shagged Bill Clinton. Put that in the Tring advertiser. Although he did afterwards, because someone was with me from Radio 4 trying to record it, and the batteries weren't working. And he said, "Well, Arthur doesn't seem like a low batteries kind of a guy."
Wow.
Which I've used as a quote ever since.
Yeah.
What's what enemies have you got in the media?
In the media,
or feuds have you got? I've got a bit of a feud with Victor Lewis Smith.
Oh yeah, everybody's got a feud with him. I mean, he's faded somewhat, hasn't he, from the scene, really. I don't know if I have that much anymore, really. I think.
Well, maybe we can start one.
Yeah, yeah.
You cunt.
No, I take it.
All right,
I take
enough,
your
then.
anger. No, I don't. I think having had so much of that in my early years, I'm not. I'm not.
No,
really,
I'm the same. Yeah, I can't be bothered to get involved now. Let me tell you, we're coming to an end shortly. Any more questions, by the way? No. All right then.
There's one.
Just one more at the back there. Yeah.
You talked about political comedy. Is it just a way of being funny, or does it make a difference?
Political comedy. I think you can't, if you do political comedy, you can't expect it to make a difference, because I think that's the road to madness, really. You can only, I think if it's anything, it's a kind of pressure. I think it is quite a sacred role, the comedian. I think that we can, and that's one of the things that bothers me about the censorious times that we live in now, that, the role of the comedian is really to poke fun, is to, I say, I speak truth to power. I also speak Spanish to ducks. Hola, señor Pato, ¿qué tal? But it's, it's a kind of important, I think, to do that, to try and provide a different view of the world, a view of the world that is kind of cynical, but is also funny, It's a really vital role for the political comic to do that, to both mock yourself, but also to, to mock the kind of power structure. And it's, and I think in a society where that is clamped down on, then that is, I think you're living in a society that's kind of dying in a way. I think, for instance, this particular government, it's allergic to scrutiny, but it's also allergic to being mocked and stuff like that. And there's a lot of pomposity around now that is not being punctured, and comedians are frightened to do it. I mean, there's a lot of kind of feeble, kind of mock the weak, kind of fucking feeble kind of shit that doesn't have any acid in it, doesn't have any aggression, or...
It probably wouldn't be allowed anyway these days.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, certainly...
Especially the BBC is kind of...
They are... Well, again, they let me do it, but I mean, I'm licensed to do... Have I got time to talk about... I don't know if anybody's heard about... I used to meet Boris Johnson, because when he was editor of The Spectator, his office was in our street, and so I used to stop and talk to him sometimes. And I found myself, he was a lot younger then, but he had this kind of upper class charm that I actually started to kind of fall for, and it kind of brought out the kind of proletarian in me. So I was kind of going, "Oh, Mr. Johnson, oh God, your golden hair."
Yeah, the sort of
he was so kind of, I was like, "Oh God, he's always lovely. Oh God, insult me in ancient Greek, Mr. Johnson."
So you've shagged Boris Johnson?
Well, no, but
I've shagged Bill Clinton.
I began to develop this fantasy that me and him were soldiers in the First World War, and I was this kind of muscular, kind of private, and he was like an officer, and I could develop this fantasy that Boris Johnson was like, he was going to lead us over the top, and we'd be in the trench, and the whistle would blow, and he'd lead us over the top, and like the whiz bangs would be going off, and the mortar bombs would be coming down there, and then so Boris is leading, and I'm following it, and then finally, the machine gun bullets are coming down, and Boris, they're whizzing past our heads, and Boris is leading, and I'm following. And at the first opportunity, I'd shoot him in the back. I'd defect to the Soviet Union.
It's funny, my father, and I've done a show about him, and in fact, it's in the books they've got here, I've got a couple of bits from his memoir that he wrote, because he was in the Second World War. He was captured at El Alamein, and then he was down a copper mine as slave labour, but he ended the war in Colditz Castle, which of course later became famous as a board game. But he never really knew why he was there, because Colditz was apart from recidivist escapers. It was mainly for really kind of posh guys who could potentially be used as hostages.
Oh,
So
right,
there was
okay,
long
yeah.
this. And my dad's job was essentially to sort of wipe their room and make them tea. So I always used to say that, you know, my dad's job was to wipe the arse of a bunch of old Etonians, as of course we must all continue to do. Have you got any more questions? Yeah, go on.
Given that we've got a comedian as Prime Minister, if you were choosing your career again after leaving university, which career would you take?
It's cute. I don't know really.
Well, you were quite good as the, what was it we said you were, the dinner lady. You could
I was a
still
dinner
do
lady,
maybe
yeah.
a lollipop lady.
Yeah.
Didn't you deal drugs briefly as well?
That's true. I was briefly a drug dealer. I was, because I found that the when I was like 16, 17, the drug dealer was like the coolest guy. He'd just come and sell the drugs and so I thought, well, I want a bit of that action. So what I used to do was I used to buy drugs at the street price and then sell them at a couple of pounds cheaper than I paid for them. And so people would go, well, man, like your dope's like a lot cheaper than, anybody else. And I'm like, yeah, I know the man, you know what I'm saying? You know, I'm super fly. And I think one of the first dates I went on with my wife, Linda, I told her about that, me being a drug dealer, and she said that was the saddest thing she'd ever heard.
Actually, talking of Linda, can I just say she features in your book, always seems to be, I mean, she's here tonight, obviously, she's always clearly been a huge support to you. And, Linda, where is she?
Up there,
let's have a little round of applause for Linda. I don't think she probably will.
I started dragging her into the act, haven't I, in the last few years. There's one episode of Sandwich Bowl where we just have a genuine row in the middle, and it's not scripted or anything. I can't even remember what it was about. Oh, what was it about? It was about your. It was about you.
Don't start again.
I said her secret power was that you tell her anything in decimal and she can immediately convert it back into pounds, shillings and pence. And so I said it and you failed to do it, didn't you? Thus...
Give her a microphone.
Well, if you've got a superpower, then you got, I've got 12p.
I don't want a microphone and I've got one. This is exactly how the row started last time. Exactly. I'm sitting quietly minding my own business and then you're doing this.
12p, how much is it?
Okay. I think
12p is 2 and 5.
we may have come to the end of this part of the evening. Alexei Sayle and Linda, thank you very much. Coming on after you, Alexei.
Alexei
Thank you
Sayle.
very much for coming.
Arthur Smith.